What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at OccupyFantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. With Brian at BrianJesterFF on Twitter. What's going on, Brian? How's it going?
Moose, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone out there listening. I'm excited for 2022. Big year.
Definitely. I really quick before we jump into it, Brian, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Good question. Actually didn't make any. I didn't make any specific New Year's resolution. Just from a DFS perspective, just tighten up my contest selection. From a personal perspective, just try to grow and be better as I can. About you?
Yeah, I actually had an odd one. Is I wanted to do at least one tweet related to sports betting a day for the entire year.
That's a good one. That's a really good one, actually.
Yeah, and so the tweet I put out right before the show was some guys for Buffalo were out and how the line move affected that. You could still get the original line at a couple places. Yeah, so that was it for me. I'm super excited about that college basketball podcast that's coming up soon. Again, if you guys have any questions about what you want to see in that podcast, I put a question in the Discord, or you can just comment here. You can message me, at me on Twitter, whatever you want. But this is not college basketball. This is NFL. We got 2 more weeks left until the playoffs. This is the Week 17 edition of our weekly live Q&A for FanDuel, DraftKings, and Yahoo. And Brian, I think we're a little different on the teams this week.
Yeah, no, I'm not too surprised, honestly, just because of how many freaking games there are. So we have 14 games on the main slate, which is, we were talking about this on Tuesday, right? It's typical of like an early season slate or even a Week 17 slate. And the fact there are so many options, we're going to get a lot of questions over the next 24 hours of, player pools and this guy or this guy. And, we're going to have to make some tough decisions on players to cut. And then by nature, it's been pretty garbage lately as far as game stacks to pick. Now we have some decent ones to pick, and we have 28 teams to pick from. So it's there's definitely going to be some decisions, and there's going to be some misalignment misalignment across views, but I'm curious to talk about it for sure.
Exactly, yeah. And we've been talking about this for as long as possible. If there's a reason why you like someone, why you like a game stack, and it's like an actual thing, not that you just like the team, then go ahead and play it. Especially in Week 17, Week 18, where things can get a little wonky. I don't hate anyone for doing that. And as we talk about that, Ed comes in and says, "What's up? Colts stack for the win."
If Sam Ellinger is starting, then that, I think that's where we draw the line at crazy for sure.
Definitely. So let's just jump right into it, and we will go to the game stacks that Chris wrote up on the Occupy Fantasy Daily Plug. You can check out at OccupyFantasy.com. The first game stack he writes about is the Cardinals at Cowboys. The highest total of the week at 52 points. Dak Prescott's ranked highly in the quarterback model. Tyron Smith is rejoining the offensive line this week. And while Arizona is missing their 2 starting cornerbacks, we've talked about this before, Brian, where cornerback wide receiver matchups don't generally matter, except when there's an injury or players are out. So I'm curious to see your thoughts on this game.
Well, when we have 2 of the starters out, then it's wheels up. So we get the Dallas passing attack, who is getting Tyron Smith back this week. Is the Dallas passing splits with and without their left tackle Tyron Smith are pretty well documented. So they're getting him back this week. And Arizona is going to be missing their top 2 cornerbacks in Robert Alford and Marco Wilson, which is obviously something that we want to talk about. Arizona's also down 3 pass rushers: Zach Allen, Marcus Golden, Devon Kennard. So they're down 3 pass rushers, their top 2 DBs. Budda Baker's questionable. So tons of injuries and COVID absences on the Arizona side. And then if you look at the flip side there, when the Arizona offense is on the field, they're getting Rodney Hudson back, their center, who's missed the last few games, and the splits are just as dramatic with him off the field as it is with Tyron Smith for Dallas. So we get 2 key offensive linemen returning, which generally aren't reflected in projections. We get some COVID absences and injuries on the Arizona side, which generally aren't reflected in projections. And we have one of the highest totals of the week. Tons of ways to stack it. It's easily my favorite game of the week, and the fact that we get Kyler Murray at 5% or so as an underdog quarterback, probably my favorite quarterback stack of the week.
Wow, that's awesome to hear. And as you can see here on screen, the best Arizona pairs for low risk, high risk, the best bringbacks depending on which side you play. Yeah, I mean, looking at the game totals, there's not many games that are even like above like 45, 46.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to have a game at 52 points, I can't see anyone not playing that.
Yeah,
David says
it's
when
too
you
good,
got
too of a stack.
yeah, David says when you guys do the plug-in model, if the game is a divisional matchup, do you look at the previous game they played this year? The reason I ask is Baltimore, Cincinnati this week, Philadelphia, Washington, Hurts, and Goddard. What do you think about that, Brian? I know for a fact we don't do that, but do you put any recency bias on last divisional matchup?
No, just because we're already dealing in football with this very small sample of 16 games, now 17 games, right? If we cut it down to just one specific sample, it's a lot of noise in that. Two, we actually see generally a decrease in passing efficiency and overall scoring in second divisional matchups. Now, granted, we can have games like Cincinnati where they explode in the second divisional matchup against Baltimore. Baltimore dealing with a lot of injuries, and again, that's why we harp on defensive injuries so much. But yeah, it's shortening the sample, looking too much into one specific matchup is probably something that I think is overvalued if people out there do it, and it's something we definitely don't do here at Occupy, just because we try to keep it as unbiased as possible and try to keep the sample size as large and as relevant as possible.
Definitely. Ed says, with 14 games, does this emphasize the 3-1 game stack, or does it push more toward exposure to games with mini stacks? That's a good question.
It is a good question, and unfortunately, we don't have a ton of data, right? Because we only have so many weeks with this many games. But 3-1 game stacks, especially when there are just a couple of games and a couple of offenses that are so much better than every other team on the slate. Some of these teams, their team totals are literally less than 17, and there's a lot of middling games. 3-1 game stacks are still going to reign supreme here, and that's the stack that I'll be looking to play a ton of this week, except for maybe moves the high spread games like Tampa Bay and Buffalo. Maybe we'll just 3-0 stack those sides.
Yeah, or let me ask you this, Brian. What if you did, for whatever reason, you decided to play one of those mid-level total games? I could see going a 2x0, 2x1 stack just because of the low scoring, and then maybe having some more of like a projections widespread mini stack approach.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And again, if teams are cheaper, right, and you just go with
Yeah.
a 2-0 stack, I think that's fine, especially smaller contests.
Definitely, yeah. Speaking of Cincinnati, the next game stack here is Kansas City Chiefs at the Cincinnati Bengals. Brian, what do you think? It's probability Cincinnati runs it back, becomes the optimal stack again this week.
I say very low, even though I'm gonna play. It just feels like it feels like such a chasing spot. But I really don't know how much chasing it is, because if you look at the projected ownership, right? So I'm pulling up in the builder here really quickly. You look at Cincinnati, so right, Joe Burrow threw for 500 yards last week. And then if this was 5 years ago, he would have like 20% ownership this week.
Yeah.
But if we look at their ownership, it's Jamar Chase 7%, T Higgins 7%, who just came off a 40-point spot. Joe Mixon 10%, Tyler Boyd 3%, Uzama 4%, and Joe Burrow 5%. So high total game. Yes, Kansas City defense has been playing better, but all metrics indicate that this is a game to target, and we get a team that just went off for like 150 combined points in the stack at less than 7% ownership for each individual player. So yeah, I think you gotta love it. And in the Kansas City side, we got the cheap running back and Darrell Williams. CEH is out, and then Tyreek and Kelsey's back. So yeah, a lot of different ways to stack this game too. It's a little bit expensive though.
Yeah, that was the only thing that made me like take a little step back, because it is so expensive. So you do have to figure out a different way to play it with your other outside of your stacked plays. Question here from Jannar says, my championship round quarterback start Kyler or Hurts?
Oh, that's tough, man. Both are good options this week. I would say, I think you got to start Hurts and just trust Vegas a little bit here, because the Hurts, they are favored by 4 points. Kyler's a 6-point underdog. And again, we're thinking about this in the context of season long, right? No salaries, nothing. Kyler, a much better tournament DFS play, but I think season long, I would go with the safety of Hurts.
Makes sense to me. Cool. And so the next thing that Chris wrote up was just the Buffalo Bills. Just don't even worry about the Falcons on this side.
Yes.
Josh Allen's the highest ranked quarterback in the model. The Falcons have allowed the third most fantasy football points per game to quarterbacks this season. While the weather will be cold and snowy, expect Buffalo to continue to attack this defense through the air. He did throw a bunch of times during that like ridiculous hurricane several weeks ago. And I was gonna say, Brian, with the cold and snowy, I guess we're gonna get Josh Allen at reduced ownership.
I think so. I hope so. And again, There are varying degrees to wind, rain, precipitation. And this one kind of has a combination of all that it's not going to be that bad like individually. It's going to be like 20 degrees, which we can deal with. It's going to be a little bit of snow, which we can deal with. And it's going to be like 15 miles per hour wind, which we can deal with. You add all three together, that makes it a little dicey. But what we generally see is we should see more running from Josh Allen. It sounds like Emmanuel Sanders is going to be out, so we still have some cheap stacking options around him. And if you look at just the quarterback position, and we have Josh Allen, who's the top quarterback in our model this week, projected for 10%, which I think is fine, but it's hard. He's one of those guys. Like, if you want to fade this game because of the weather, I understand it. But if you want to fade Josh Allen as a 14-point favorite, that's one of the scariest quarterback fades you can have because he could easily put up 40 and be the highest scoring quarterback.
Exactly, yes. So definitely a lot of interesting games. The one that might get me canceled from this, we're going to skip over the Tampa Bay game here real quick, but the Rams at Baltimore. Brian, would it be safe to say, or maybe I'm just trying to get the clickbait views, if Lamar Jackson plays, I'm not playing that stack. I'd rather play Tyler Huntley over Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I don't think Lamar is going to play, but in that hypothetical, I agree with you because he's clearly not 100%. The dude could barely walk on Wednesday, right? If they do trot him out there, he's not going to have the same rushing upside he will. Yeah. Huntley's cheaper, right? So there's actually tons of positives for this game stack on the Baltimore side if Huntley does play. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I was trying to just clip. Moose says Huntley is quarterback one. I didn't go that far, but
yeah, we'll definitely take it that way for sure.
Ed says the Curtis Samuel theory will reign supreme this week, with most exposure being in the top 3 games. You have to get unique. With that being said, who is the Curtis Samuel this week?
Yes, I actually think the same thing we always talk about, right? As far as while these games will be popular, 3x1 stacks still aren't as popular as they should be. Like we talk about this every single week. That hasn't changed too much this year. But if we look at the games that we want to stack, and I'm just pulling it up here on my side. So if you're looking at Arizona and Dallas, pretty expensive game stack overall. But you have AJ Green at 5,300 DraftKings, Gallup 4,800. Both those guys can catch long touchdowns. Antoine Wesley, who we continue to see play just a ton of snaps in the DeAndre Hopkins spot, he's still only 3,600. Chase Edmonds 5,700 if James Conner sits, and he's trending very questionable. And I like Dalton Schultz from that game at tight end at 5K. Now, if you look at the other game, the Kansas City and Cincinnati game, this is where it gets difficult to find a Curtis Samuel piece because you have Jamar Chase 76, Tyreek 83, T Higgins 69, Kelsey 73. So it's got to be Moose. It's got to be Darrell Williams 5,800, Tyler Boyd 5,400, Byron Pringle 4,100, maybe Uzama 3,300. But that game gets really tricky really quickly to try to stack with all those expensive pieces.
Yeah, I know we don't like to play the what if scenario, but there was that report saying how Tyreek Hill basically was struggling last game. Do you think maybe if you do drop down to Pringle, save that salary? Not to say that you hope that it's the same thing, but what if he's not 100%? What if Tyreek's only 75% and they throw more to Pringle?
And what if Kelsey's not 100%? This is his first week back. We don't know this, right? We're just speculating. Yeah. But you're paying full price for him, so it's tough. This game pops in a lot of metrics, but it is really difficult to stack. And I'm wondering, Moose, do you think this is a better 2-1 game stack because of the pricing if you don't feel comfortable with Byron Pringle or Darrell Williams or whoever?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Just with so many games, it almost makes me want to step back and say, would I rather play Byron Pringle with the correlation, or I don't have the model up now, but someone relatively one-off on his price range in a potentially better spot?
Yeah, and again, there's not that many other guys in that price range, so that's why we always go with the Curtis Samuel theory. But maybe on a 14-game slate, maybe there are more options to look at. So I think it's definitely a balance as you're building your lineups and seeing what's possible and what's not.
I think I just messed the stream up. Are we good?
We're still live.
Yeah, we're still live. No, I accidentally exited out of the thing by accident. No, we're good. Here we go.
Okay.
Working with the dual monitors gets me messed up. You just barely click. Move your mouse over to the next monitor. Click. You're ripped.
Yeah,
but we're good now.
Be careful.
We are very good here. As Jannar talks about, Huntley's 90% of passes go to Andrews. So what do you think about that 2x stack where just Huntley and Andrews? I can see that working.
Yeah. Right, and when we drop the 2x stacks, right, that's generally a cheaper option and or running quarterback, and Huntley certainly qualifies there. And Marquise Brown, Surprised someone on Baltimore's sick. He hasn't practiced the last couple of days. So if Marquise is out, then yeah, obviously it's a smash spot for Andrew. So I could see that.
Definitely. Cool. And then I guess just to close it all off with the stacks, the Tampa Bay and New York Jets game. Antonio Brown's dealing with a late week ankle injury. Brian, I'm just going to jump right into it. I just don't think you play anybody from the Jets on the side.
So you know what's funny? I actually feel better about playing one single Jets player than I do any of the Atlanta players in that game, because Atlanta, we've seen the splits when they play a good team, right? They just get freight trained every single time. So I'm totally fine with not even playing a single Atlanta player, playing Bills 3-0 stacks, Bills 2-0 stacks. That's fine. Tampa Bay, here's why, and it's Braxton Berrios is the guy that I like. And again, he's going to get a ton of kick returns. We know that, right? So that you have that a little bit of upside. We actually saw that transpire last week. But if you look at Berrios, first of all, because Jameson Crowder is out, Elijah Moore is not coming back this week. So Braxton Berrios is going to continue to draw targets. And if you look at the last few games, he had 10 targets, then he had 1 target when some guys were back, and then 6 targets last week against Jacksonville. And Tampa Bay's slot corner is injured, Sean Murphy-Bunting. He's out. So we get a backup slot corner, which is where Berrios runs all of his routes. They're going to be down 1 billion points, probably. But if they're coming back, lots of slot routes, I could see it. The interesting part, the most, is the Tampa Bay side, because Mike Evans, it sounds like not only is he dealing with the hamstring, but it sounds like he was negatively affected by COVID, where people in practice observing were saying he was fatigued and didn't look right. So even if he does play, he's a scary play at his price, given what we know. And then AB, we don't really know the extent of what's going on, right? Are they protecting him? Are they being safe because every single other player on their offense is out? Or is he truly hurt? We won't know. We'll probably get some reports here today and later tonight. But if Evans is out, if AB's out, now we see the same offense that Tom Brady couldn't move the ball against New Orleans when all of his players were out. So, that becomes a tricky game as well if AB and Evans are both out.
Is that when we just go super galaxy brain? We do like the Brady, Tyler Johnson, Cyril Grayson, Braxton Berrios stack for all the money?
Yeah, you save all your salary that way, and you just play every other good player on the slate. I mean, Gronk probably smashes in that scenario, but I don't know. And you know what? Just from like a game theory perspective, we get so tired of chalk receivers. If AB plays, he's going to be like 30, 40%, maybe 50, 60% in some smaller high dollar contests. If he's out, that eliminates that from just our consideration that we have to think about. So
that's true. Yeah. Let's see here. I got some questions in here. From Eric, championship game, I projected a 4-point dog to my competitor. 2 questions. 1 running back starts, choose 2. Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, and/or CPAT. And 2 tight ends start, Higbee, Komet, or Uzoma.
So yeah, definitely Jonathan Taylor. You're never, if you make it to the championship, you sit him and you win, you're inducted into the Fantasy Football Hall of Fame, right? Just play Jonathan Taylor. I'm not playing C. Patterson with his workload down as a 1 billion point underdog. Yeah, so the first 2, Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor. For the tight end, a little trickier. I'll say for me, Jesus Christ, I guess I'll go Higbee, but just because the game environment in Chicago, cold, windy, snow. So yeah, I'll go Higbee. But all 3 of those guys are bunched up. I would just flip a 3-sided coin.
Makes sense to me. And then thoughts on Perriman if AB is ruled out, revenge narrative against the Jets. Yeah,
I like Perriman too. He's coming off COVID too, which is, again, maybe he plays 3 snaps. We don't freaking know. But I think Perriman would slide right in there. It's him, Tyler Johnson as the guys. So he would be top of the list probably.
Cool. Cool. So we talked about all the stacks that's written up in the plug. Brian, I'm going to bring up the running back model, and I have it sorted by DraftKings ownership percentages. We talk about playing these really popular running backs in this scenario. So just to name off a couple: Montgomery, Michelle, Jones, JT. Any of these kind of stand out and that you want to go way over the field on, or from the flip side, you want to go under the field on?
Yeah, so the first thing I notice is we don't have any 30, 40% guys like we see on 9, 10 game slates, right? 14 games, shit gets spread out a little bit more. So, I think Montgomery's probably owned appropriately as the highest owned, right? As his price and the workload. I mean, there are a lot of interesting ones here. Michelle with no Darrell Henderson. and I think a lot of people are going to play the Rams passing game with the known injuries to Baltimore secondary. However, I will say Baltimore is getting Jimmy Smith back this week, and they've had Chuck Clark back. We we talk about this often, right? If you get an injury after the game, late in the game, middle of the week, right, you can adjust. When you get an injury like at the start of a game in your secondary, it throws things off completely. And that happened in Baltimore last week as well. Anthony Averett, who was their top corner last week, got hurt after like 8 plays. So now you're trying to adjust on the fly with an already depleted secondary against a team that is just like the ultimate fuck you passing every play, and you're trying to deal with it, right? Now Jimmy Smith's coming back. Averett's already been ruled out. They can develop a game plan. Assuming they don't lose another defenseman, 3 seconds into the game, they'll probably play a little bit better than they did last week. So I think a lot of people are going to play the Rams passing game as a result of last week, but that means Sonny Michel is a fantastic pivot who's going to get 99% of the work in the backfield. So I think I'm willing to go heavier on Michel than Montgomery for that reason. But this week is a lot of running backs who are in decent to good situations, but not smash spots, and that makes it difficult from a perspective of making a lot of lineups on which guys to include and which to exclude.
You were just going to make it to my next point, that the fact that there's so many different plays just from there's so many games that we're just going to have to X out somebody. I think, Brian, does it make sense to say you want to kind of keep your player pool, if you're doing 20 max, 150 max, whatever, keep your player pool the same size as it is a regular main slate, because you don't want to spread yourself too thin.
For sure. And I was looking this week, and I was before the show, and I was just trying to figure out my running backs, and I literally clicked to page 2 in the builder, which is like after top 25, and I was like, wow, I could still play some of these guys, but you're right, we gotta cut it down, and we gotta find some criteria to cut those guys down, because it's really tough. Because you get guys like in the 25 to 30 range that could put up 15, 20 this week, so it's rough.
Yeah, it is. Gary says, does a 3-1 stack work on Yahoo GPPs?
Great question, Gary. And I encourage you to listen to the podcast I do with Kirk Dees from Roto Grinders every Friday. And we talk about this some. But 3-1s are a little less profitable on Yahoo. And the big reason for that is their pricing is so bad. You end up with so many value plays that just by pure projections, they're way better. So correlation obviously still works, but you really only want a 3-1 stack if the players are good plays. Like there's no Curtis Samuel theory over there. There's no need to jam in like a secondary type guy. Like if all 3 guys in the game stack are good plays, sure, a 3-1 will work. But if you're forcing it in just to force in a 3-1, it doesn't work as well on Yahoo because of the pricing.
Yeah, I know you talk about Yahoo having soft pricing. It kind of reminds me of NBA, where a guy may be, I think min price on DraftKings is like $4,000. A guy might be $4,500 to $5,000, but on Yahoo, he's min price $10. And
right,
I'm actually looking.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, there's actually a handful of guys like that. So, yeah, definitely interesting. Definitely.
Speaking of NBA, real quick. Speaking of NBA, the guy who won the GPP last night on DraftKings, the 100K, solo bullet, not a pro or anything. He had 5 guys from the same team on a 7-game slate.
That's wow.
I've never seen that in my life.
No, was there like a COVID issue and all those people were playing?
No, just like I don't know how. It was unbelievable. It was really wild.
That's insane. That's nuts. Ed comes in and says, time for the weekly best worst play and the worst best play.
All right. So let me pull it up here. I'm gonna pull up ownership on my side too, just so I have it. So give me a second here. Let's see. All right, so I'm just looking at flex. Let's get all the teams out here. I'm just looking on my side in the builder, right? And if we sort by ownership, oh god, it's hard to fade AB at 24%. Montgomery,
I was actually going to say that, like, if he's actually hurt, depending on his injury, I could see him being the worst best play. But again, it's tough to say that to fade him at 20-30%, and he goes off for 2 touchdowns with depleted.
Especially a smaller contest, dude, right? Like 100-player leagues, and he's 50% owned, and he goes off. That makes it really tough. The one I'm looking at here is Cole Beasley, and I'm just thinking, like, I mean, if he's 17% projected in the wind, his ADOT's like the same as Rondale Moore's, for Christ's sake. I'm not playing him at 15% ownership. I'd much rather play Gabriel Davis or Dawson Knox. So I think Cole Beasley is the worst best play by ownership, assuming that 15% plus number holds. And the best worst play is probably, I don't even want to say that name. You know what? I'll say it. I'll say it. It's Kenny Galladay, who is underperforming wide receiver because all of his quarterbacks suck. So naturally, he's underperforming. Hasn't scored a touchdown this year, but it's like it's out there in the public. He's talking about having not scored. He's got to score before the end of the season. He was talking about it in the press conference. And they're literally down every single receiver on the team.
Yeah,
it's Kenny Galladay, literally him, Darius Slayton, Kovic, Sterling Shepard, Achilles, John Ross, Colin Johnson, Kadarius Toney. I think there's one more. Pettis is already out. There's like literally everyone besides Galladay on the active roster is out. So if they're going to throw, they got to throw to Galladay. Got the narrative going for him. He's got the underperforming wide receiver tag, 2% ownership. I guess I'll go Galladay, but just be prepared for like 4 points.
Definitely. Matt says, do I play Kirk, Eli Mitchell, or A.J. Dillon if I play all PPR?
Definitely Kirk for me. A.J. Dillon going to split work even in a great game environment in the cold weather. Mitchell, there are some questions about his workload coming back, whereas Christian Kirk's is just in a perfect spot. So I think you got to go Christian Kirk.
Cool. Ed says, Jack Doyle and T.Y. are my best worst plays, both thinking retirement and both safety valves for a new quarterback.
I don't know if you've seen Sam Ehlinger play, but he's absolutely terrible, right? We're talking Ian Book levels here. So if he can complete 10 passes, maybe they get there. I'm good on it. But I agree. They got the retirement narrative for Doyle and T.Y. Hilton. You got to love it. Just pray that Carson Wentz comes back and they have a chance to actually catch passes.
Definitely. Cool. So we have just a couple more minutes left until 2:30. Brian, is there any last lingering thoughts, questions, or anything you want to talk about before I take us out of here?
We might as well say it because you had the Cincinnati game stack hidden in your back pocket last week. Any other stacks we haven't talked about that you like?
Let me see here. So there's
really quick while you're looking, I've got a question from Jake in the chat. Is Wentz back? It'll be down to the wire. He can be cleared tomorrow morning. We don't know if he's going to be cleared, so we'll have to monitor.
Okay. Let's see here. So I'm looking up here. Let me see. There's one that like kind of pops off a little bit, and that is the Chargers. So just the Chargers side of that game. Is that popped out for you at all, Brian?
I'll say. So the scheme, Denver's defense is great, and their scheme has caused a lot of teams trouble, including the Chargers. But they are missing their slot corner. Oh wait, sorry, that's on the Chargers side. Denver's missing Bradley Chubb. That's who it is. Who's obviously a great pass rusher. So I see it. The scheme is just tough. The big thing here is, right, Denver's missing all their weapons on offense, so maybe the Chargers get a little more possession than initially anticipated. So I could certainly see it, but second divisional matchup in a team they historically struggle against, I guess.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from a 3-0 or maybe a 2-by-1 because if you look just from their rankings in the model, you have Herbert who's what 5th in the model. You have Eckler who's top 10. You have Keenan Allen who's 6th. You have nobody at all. I don't even know who their tight end's name is called.
Like a Steven Anderson who's going to be freaking 15% in like high dollar contests for some reason.
Yeah, so you have players up there that are near the top of the model. I don't hate it.
You could run it back with Fant too. Remember, Denver's probably going to be missing all 3 of the receivers. Fant, the only other guy they have. So
yeah. Ed says, do they have to add him by 4 p.m. today, or is that the old quarantine rules?
So I think, obviously this is ever changing, but I think they have to activate him to the roster by 4 p.m. today. But that doesn't mean anything. They still have to test out. So it could be like what we saw with Kelsey last week, where they activated him in anticipation that maybe he gets cleared Sunday morning. So just because he gets activated today doesn't necessarily mean he's playing. We have to watch for the test results tomorrow morning.
Makes sense. Yeah, we need what is it like when they elect a new pope and like the smoke comes out? We just need that from like the NFL quarantine facilities. Just like
Wentz has been activated.
yes, that would be great. Cool. So, anything else before I take us out, Brian?
Leon in the chat says Wentz has been cleared, so maybe we missed that. So let me see. Hold on. Leon Schefter. So he's been activated from the reserve list, which is what we just said. I don't know if he's been cleared yet, but it's the same situation as Kelsey so far.
Okay.
Which is what we just talked about. So let's monitor and double check that he actually does get cleared.
Yeah, and if he does, I'm sure Leon Schefter will be the first to post it in our Discord.
For sure. Shout out Leon.
Definitely leave me on. So yeah, so that'll pretty much do it for today's show. Again, if you have any more questions, you can always let us know on Twitter. Our DMs are open. We have our Discord as well. If you're watching this and you want to make a comment, ask your questions down below in the comments. If you like the video, hit like and subscribe. We're doing our 3,000 subscriber giveaway very soon. And actually, because Jannar has a great question, we're gonna answer this. Difference between DraftKings and Yahoo. I'm new to Yahoo.
Yeah, so I actually just linked in the chat the free strategy guide we have, because it does talk about the Yahoo differences. The biggest thing is ownership gets even more condensed on that site because pricing is so bad. So just try to compare the model and the pricing, or your whatever projections you use in the pricing, because they're going to be much better plays on Yahoo than you see on other sites. So a little bit less correlation there, more projections heavy than, say, DraftKings or FanDuel.
And then actually, one sentence about the cover boy, because we haven't talked about the 49ers at all.
That's probably fair. Trey Lance, Jimmy G, very unlikely to play. Trey Lance's min price. He averages 9 runs per half, essentially, because he came in half a game and started the game. Basically, we can expect double-digit runs for him at near minimum price. And he's the number 3 overall pick in the draft. So he's talented. Going to be by far the most popular quarterback in low-risk contests. Where it gets interesting in high-risk contests is, do you play him? How do you stack him? Because naturally there's going to be less passing volume, so we're not going to 3-1 stack Trey Lance unless we think he's going to be throwing 30, 40 times, which he probably won't.
Yeah, just play him and Debo. Just get running back 1 and 2. You're good.
Yeah, Debo catches no passes. Lance completes no passes, but they combine for 45 DK points because they both run for 4 touchdowns.
Yes, absolutely. So, all right, that'll do it. Until next time, Moose and Brian here from Occupy Fantasy. Have a good night.
Peace.